Oh, how do I even explain this story? So we got approached by a journalist who was meant to work for a newspaper, but it turned out that he was just interested in children. Luckily, I was protected by my mum and dad, but that was probably the first time that I realised safety is a massive thing for me. Hi, my name's Connie, and you probably know me as the little 6-year-old girl who sang on Britain's Got Talent. These are the things that you need to know about child stars.
DEEP X.
School. I loved school so much. I literally devoted myself to being top of the class, and I loved everything except maths, and I'm still not very good at maths. After Britain's Got Talent, there was a shift in my peers at school. I didn't really allow myself to get bullied, but you would assume that it would be quite a cool thing to be on television and sing on a show that people watch, but it was quite the opposite actually. It wasn't a cool thing. Most of my school life was just people singing Over the Rainbow at me from down the corridor. I didn't have a terrible time at school, but there was definitely a shift after Britain's Got Talent.
Do you think that came from jealousy or interest, or where do you think that shift came from?
It just being odd and different. And also I spent a lot of time away from school, and kids just move on, like friendships just go like this, and suddenly I'm back at school like 3 months later and I don't know anyone. But I think if it was now, it would be a bit different. I think kids are more accepting of social media and likes on Instagram.
And when you say that you were taking breaks from school, was that because you were going to practice the singing? Was that specifically for Britain's Got Talent, or was that just for you after Britain's Got Talent, trying to further your career?
Yeah, I took breaks from school travelling the world. There's been some amazing times, and I don't like to come across as ungrateful because I've lived a life that's been full of adventure and I've met some incredible people. But it was definitely like when I did my first album, I spent a lot of time in America, a lot of time in Southeast Asia. It almost felt weird to go back.
How were you keeping up with your studies?
So I had a grant from my principal. Is that an American word, principal? What do we say?
Head teacher?
Head teacher. I had a grant from my head teacher. He basically said that it was an educational thing, being able to see the world and see different cultures and learn music, which was an incredible thing. It allowed me to do everything that I've done and seen the world. I mean, my mum tried to help me as much as possible, but I just had a lot of catching up to do when I got back, basically. That's why I'm really bad at maths now.
Do you remember that you were really enjoying it like you would now as an adult, or was it more just a bit of a blur and it was just the reality of your life?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really remember a lot of my career. And people look at me like, you don't remember going to Poland and singing on the biggest charity show ever? And I'm like, well, no, I just remember the canteen and eating the really nice food. It's so weird because I just disassociate little me with who I am now. It just felt normal at the time. It was always something that I wanted to do, and it just felt like my dreams were becoming a reality. And there was a lot of sacrifice that came with that. Safety. It's still a massive thing now, but it was even more important when I was a child. It's quite a dark one, to be honest. It exposed me to the darker sides of the world that probably a child wouldn't hear of until later in life. Oh, how do I even explain this story? So we got approached by a journalist who was meant to work for a newspaper, but it turned out that he was just interested in children. Luckily, I was protected by my mum and dad, but that was probably the first time that I realised safety is a massive thing for me. I remember just after coming off the show, I had a bodyguard called Danny, and he was 6'10", and he'd follow me to school every day, be with me on the playground. People would climb the trees outside my school just to get a photo of a little girl in a uniform, which is just gross. My mum and dad were literally pulling their hair out. And I can't imagine what that would feel like. I've got 2 4-year-old nieces now, and I just think I would literally track down any person that had any kind of interest in them at that age. That was the start of sort of safety precautions coming off the show. Family. My mum and dad definitely tried to keep family life as normal as possible, but there was times where my older siblings couldn't come with us across the world for months at a time because they had school, and it was definitely difficult, and that's something that now as an adult I sort of feel bad for taking that time away from my brother and sister, from their parents too.
Do you think that there were experiences that you had as a family that bonded you or brought extra stuff that other people wouldn't have had as a child star?
In a way, it definitely bonded us on some levels. We've been very vulnerable with each other. Even doing this today, I had a conversation with my mum and dad, and my dad was like, I don't know whether to look back on it with like good memories or bad memories. There's a bit of both. I mean, we've had some incredible times, like never in my life would I expect to travel the world with my parents at such a young age. That just wasn't in the cards for us as a family. Me and my parents are so close, it's actually unbelievable.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it's good.
So just on that, can you talk us through some of the craziest experiences you had as a child?
I performed at the G20 summit for world leaders, which I have no recollection of. But that's amazing. I suppose meeting people all over the world, really. Like, I couldn't actually believe that people wanted to come to a concert in Korea and watch me sing for an hour as a child, and some of those people are still with me today and so loyal. I did a music video. It was a cover of Bob Marley's Don't Worry About, no, Three Little Birds, forget, in Jamaica, which was an incredible experience, and it went to #1 in America. Just baffling.
God, that's amazing.
Yeah, bizarre, absolutely bizarre.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 7 years old. It's just absolutely bizarre.
Crazy, wow. Did you meet any other celebrities?
Yeah, I met George Clooney, which was amazing. He asked me to marry him. Don't have the ring yet, but waited a long time. I met Justin Bieber, which was a massive deal and still would be a massive deal now. He tried to speak to my sister and she ran off and screamed. Oprah Winfrey, I did the Oprah Winfrey show, and she was just the most down-to-earth, wonderful lady you could ever meet. Amazing.
And how old were you when you met Justin Bieber?
I think I was about 10. I went to his movie premiere, Never Say Never.
Still a believer?
Still a believer, yeah.
Have you met any other child stars?
I've met the kids that have come off Britain's Got Talent, which is nice because we can relate on a lot of things. That almost feels like we've got this bond, unspoken bond between each other. Assumptions. So one big assumption of a child star is that because we've been on television, we're all mega rich. I've actually have a friend that is always like, you're worth 5 million because Google said so. And I'm like, I wish, but no. And people assume that you make a lot of money just because you've been on television, but that's definitely not the case, especially having parents that are just not in the showbiz industry. I mean, we've been through a lot as a family. We've signed stuff that has just not been very good at all. Like, people that I become friends with, they often say, oh, I thought you'd be a bitch, but it turns out that you're actually really nice. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah, people assume that you're sort of stuck up, but no, my mum and dad made sure that I was right down to earth the whole time, which I appreciate.
And when you see other child stars and then you hear stories in the news about them, you know, having difficulty or struggling with things, can you relate to that?
Yeah, definitely. So easily happens that child stars go down a path that is just not good for them mentally, physically. Because it's a lot to cope with. I feel like in that early stage of life, you really build on your personality, and I feel like those first years of life are so important because they ingrain your morals and your personality, basically. I think you can easily feel lost of who you are and who you're meant to be as an adult. For me, I've sort of got this theory that you either go off the rails or become a people pleaser, which I definitely am, unfortunately.
And if there was somebody watching this now, potentially someone who's just won a talent competition or just won something big that potentially is setting them on a road to becoming famous at a young age, what would be your message to them?
It sounds really cliche, but just be yourself. Like, step out of the boundaries just because you're sort of pigeonholed into this person that you're meant to be. I feel like today's society allows us to not be so put in a box, and we're allowed to be whoever we want to be and allowed to push buttons. So that would be my advice, and just make sure that it's fun. If it's not fun, then it's not worth it.